Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Now we will look at some of the methods that we can use to conserve. One of it is prevention of poaching. Poaching means illegal hunting of animals or killing of animals for commercial purposes. Okay. So one of the method is by preventing acts of poaching or preventing the poachers. Okay. The second is by introducing laws and also imposing them by seeing through its implementation for the protection of threatened and endangered species. Okay, we need to make sure that laws are being introduced by the government or by the concerned bodies, and those laws are properly followed by all the people. Okay, be it whether they are higher officials or whether they are normal people, everyone should follow those laws properly, sincerely. And by following those laws, we can protect the species of animals that whose lives are threatened and whose lives are also endangered. The third method is by creating awareness among people for the conservation of wildlife. The fourth is by preventing and preserving the natural habitat of the wildlife, meaning natural habitat means the places where they live. Places where they live. Okay, like forests, right? Forest is one of their natural habitat. So we need to make sure that their natural habitats are preserved. They are protected, they are not polluted, the trees there are not cut. So that way we can also conserve the wildlife. The fifth is by demarcating national parks, sanctuaries and reserves and protecting them. So also by setting up, by creating national parks, sanctuary, wildlife sanctuaries and biosphere reserves, we can also conserve the wildlife. We have a law, okay, which is introduced by the government, and that law has to be followed by all of us, and that is called the Environmental Protection Act of 1986, and this law oversees that the protection of the environment, the overall protection of the environment is done, that the environment is not harmed. That means that the plants and animals' lives are not put to danger because of human activities, because of reckless activities of the humans. Okay. Now, one of the ways to conserve is by conserving the biodiversity, right? We have such a diverse species of plants and animals that we find in our country, right? So this biodiversity needs to be conserved. Now, plant and animal resources in India are abused, are misused. Okay, they're exploited, they're overused, they're used for more than what is required. Okay. So with that, the lives of plants and animals are put to danger. Like we said, many species of plants and animals have already become extinct, and others are on the line of extinction. They're on the verge, very close to being extinct. Those species of animals and plants are called endangered species. Okay. There are 1300 plant species which are in the endangered list. So every country has a list, and in that list they put down the names of the plants, the species of the plants which are endangered, whose lives are in danger. They can become extinct any moment. Okay, so there are about 1300 plant species which are in that list, and 20 others, okay, apart from that 1300, 20 others are already extinct. Okay. Now, in order to stop that, in order to stop the plants and animals from being extinct, what what has been done? Many plans and programs have been introduced and they have also been implemented so that steps towards prevention of the extinction and protection of the plant species, animal species are done. Okay, and these programs, these plans, what they do, they preserve and regenerate the flora and fauna. Flora and fauna means plants and animals. Okay, so they preserve and regenerate them in India. Okay, regenerate means to recreate. Recreation of certain species of animals, reproduction of certain species of plants and animals. So that is being done through the plans and programs. Okay. And another way is that many trees are also planted. Okay. They're planted for preserving and regenerating the forests. By planting the trees, what do? We preserve the forest and we also regenerate the forest. If the forest has been denuded by the reckless cutting down of the trees, then by replanting the trees, afforestation, we regenerate the forests. Okay, and that way we also develop, we also preserve the natural habitats of the wildlife. If we destroy the natural habitats, then the wildlife cannot exist. They need their natural habitat to be preserved and protected. Okay. So periodic surveys and census are also conducted for the conservation of biodiversity. Okay, and some of these projects, okay, some of these surveys, some of these census, these are records which are maintained by projects like Tiger Project or Project Tiger, Project Rhino. So what they do, they concentrate on one of the species of animals, like for example, tiger. Every year they take down number of tigers that are present in their natural habitat. Okay, say for example, Sundarbans of West Bengal. Every January of every year, they put down the number of tigers still alive and healthy. Next year again in January, they'll take another survey of how many tigers are still alive or how many have reproduced or how their health has been, all that. Now that way, what can be done? Through the project, they spend money, they make sure that these tigers are healthy, they have a healthy environment to live in, their natural habitat is protected, preserved. That way, they can look after, properly manage the wildlife, properly take care of the preservation and the protection of the one species of animal, that is tiger. So, in a similar manner, Project Rhino also works and other projects. Okay. In India, there are 16 tiger reserves right now. Okay, and these tiger reserves main aim is to keep the success of the tiger, Project Tiger. Okay, so these reserves make sure that the aims and objectives of the project, what the project want, they want to make sure that the tigers are not extinct. So that aim is fulfilled by these reserves. Alright. Now India has the Great Indian Bustard. This is a very unique and beautiful bird that is found in Rajasthan. Now that is again endangered, means it is also, if not preserved or conserved, going to be extinct soon. Okay. So there are a lot of animals and birds or parts of wildlife which are facing or experiencing similar fate. Alright. India has 480 wildlife sanctuaries and 86 national parks. So these large number of wildlife sanctuaries and national parks, why are they there? Why are they built in India? So that they can make sure that animals and birds and insects like the Great Indian Bustard of Rajasthan, like the tigers in Sundarbans, they are properly managed, they are protected and they are conserved. Okay, so the main idea of these wildlife sanctuaries and national parks are to make sure that the natural habitats of the wildlife are protected and safe and conserved. So let us now look what is a national park. National park is a large area. It's a massive area with several ecosystems. Okay, in one ecosystem there are trees, there are other things required by the animals. So that is one ecosystem. They depend upon each other for living there in that particular area. So there are several such ecosystems, and these exist freely, and they are not disturbed by human exploitation or occupation. So there is no human presence there. Humans do not go and settle down in the national park. No, it is a completely restricted area for the humans. It is only for the animals, the plants, the insects, the wildlife to have an undisturbed occupation. Okay, they are there, not disturbed by human occupation. Now here, the plant animal species, okay, aesthetic sites and habitats are of special scientific, educational and recreational interest. The animals and plant species, they are protected, okay, in a national park. But at the same time, they are also of scientific interest. They are also protected and conserved so that people who are interested to study, people who study them can do a proper study, okay, so that they can share that information with others. They can tell people about what they have learned about certain plants, animals or birds. And they're also of great recreational interest. People can go there and look at the rhinos, look at the tigers, look at the diverse species of plants available there. So these are the purpose for which the national park serves. Okay. The second one is wildlife sanctuary. Now many people get confused between national park and wildlife sanctuaries. They think these are just like zoos where you can see animals but in the wild. In the zoo, they are in cages. Okay. But there is a difference between national park and wildlife sanctuary. Now wildlife sanctuaries are just like national park, but the only difference is that activities such as grazing, the animal grazing, people taking their cows, people taking their sheep to graze in the land of that area, collection of forest produce like medicine, plants, fruits, firewood, all that are allowed in the wildlife sanctuary. But in the national park, no such human activities are allowed. They are completely free from the human occupation in any sense. But in the wildlife sanctuary, humans can go, take their livestock, let the livestock graze there, also use that area, the forest produce, to be collected and take back with them for their consumption and use. Okay, so that is the only difference between national park and the wildlife sanctuary. Now another conservation idea is the biosphere reserves. So these are some of the methods that we are understanding for conservation. By setting up a national park, we conserve the natural habitat of the wildlife. By setting up wildlife sanctuary, we make sure that the wildlife are protected, preserved and conserved. Now another method is by setting up biosphere reserves. Now biosphere reserves are multi-purpose protected areas. If you remember in the last chapter, we did this biosphere reserve in that chapter as well. So by now you must be quite aware. But if you are not, we are going to do it again. So biosphere reserves are one of the areas which function as a multi-purpose protected area for the vegetation as well as the wildlife. Okay. Here the biosphere reserves are built for the conservation of biodiversity. The diverse plants, animals, different species, the ecosystem, all that needs to be conserved or is conserved in these reserves. And they also make sure that the biodiversity and its sustainable use is maintained by the humans. Now, humans are very integral part of the ecosystem, right? In our ecosystem, we have plants, animals, we have other environmental elements. But humans also play a very important part of that ecosystem. Okay, humans' presence and involvement is also very important. So we need to be very much involved in the process of conservation as well. Okay. Now, in the biosphere reserves, sometimes agricultural activities are allowed. Okay, only sometimes, not all the times. And tourism is also encouraged in these areas. So you see, these biosphere reserves are quite normal areas, but at the same time they are protected. Here the animals, plants are living properly in proper care of certain people who are responsible for their conservation. But the humans who play active part in it, in a biosphere reserve, they also are involved in the conservation. So they will be allowed to conduct their agricultural activities, but in keeping in mind that they are not harming the environment, that they are not damaging the ecological balance. Okay. And here tourism is also encouraged. So the tourists are allowed to come and then enjoy the biodiversity of that area. Okay. So all this are working out together. Humans, animals, plants, the ecosystem. Okay. Now these biosphere reserves are the most appropriate places, one of the most appropriate places to promote environmental awareness. So people who come there to visit, the tourists who come from outside, or people can share information, can make information available, okay, from the biosphere reserve and tell others as to how in this manner we can protect our environment, the ways we can protect our environment. So the awareness drive can take place in a most appropriate manner from the biosphere reserves. Okay. Now the government also plays a very important role in the conservation of the wildlife. Okay. Let us see how. The first one is that the government can set up national parks, sanctuaries and biosphere reserves in various parts of a country. Okay, that way they automatically work towards protection, preservation and conservation of the wildlife. The second one is that the government can order for census and surveys to be done periodically. Okay, in some time, maybe once in 6 months or once in a month or once in 3 months or once in a year. And that way they can find out the current position of the state of the plants and animals, and then they can know what species are endangered, what species are not, and then act accordingly. The third one is the government conserves the wildlife by banning their killing. The government introduces laws or policies which clearly tells the people not to kill the wild animals. And if they are found to be killing the wild animals, then they will be punished, strictly punished. So that way the government also plays a very important role in the conservation of wildlife. Okay. Now that was the government. What is our duty? How do we play a role in the conservation? Okay. Our duty is very important. The duty of the government is important. The purpose of building or setting up sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, they're also important, but our duty is equally important, okay, when it comes to conservation of wildlife. So we as human beings, we have to be very careful of our activities. We can start by avoiding careless or reckless hunting of wild animals. Okay, we should stop hunting of animals, killing of animals for commercial purpose or for a sport that we enjoy or for other things. Okay, we should also stop felling of trees, cutting of trees and clearing of forests in the name of development, in the name of progress. Okay, we have to be careful about how we see progress, what we understand by development. We cannot work towards development and for that cut down the trees, damage the environment, increase the amount of pollution. That is not development. So we have to be careful about how we see, how we plan development, how we manage at the same time the natural resources. Okay. And at the end, what we should do, we should all come together to protect our national wealth. It's all our wealth. The wealth of you, I, our parents, our friends, everybody, the government. And that wealth is the wildlife. It's a very priceless wealth. Okay. If we do not protect it, if we do not preserve it, then we will regret and will face the consequences of our actions, of our carelessness very soon. Okay.